good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for once again putting us on your screen with the live wire on Inside UNC Charlotte. And today we have a treat. We're going to be reflecting on what we learned from a fairly significant event in the life of our university. For the first time, we used a football stadium, came pretty close to filling it, and the players on the field were wearing uniforms that said 49ers on them. And our guest to talk about the impact that we've seen so far and what we expect from the first ever football program at UNC Charlotte is our athletics director, Judy Rose. And Judy, thank you for being with us, and we're looking forward to our next half hour or so of conversation.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
All right. And we know that many of you who are watching us right now are going to have a number of questions. One thought that we'd like to stick with is let's talk a little bit about, let's keep the conversation focused actually on the impact on the university and on our campus of football, what we need to know about it as primarily the folks who are part of the immediate campus community. And there will be plenty of other times we're going to ask Judy and any member of her staff back to talk about various other aspects of our athletics program. There's always so much to talk about, and you are always out so often talking about it. This is not the first or the last time that our audience will have a chance to speak with you. One thing I like to do, maybe to just get warmed up, is to take a look at a very brief video that's on our UNC Charlotte YouTube channel. You can check it out on your own after the live wire, but let's take a look at it now, and I'll go ahead and start it right here. And this is just fan perspective of what it was like, and I thought it would be a good way to set the stage. So let's take a look at that now. What I come away with from that video, and also from having been there, is that it's so much more than the game itself. It's an experience, and it's an experience that involves much of, if not the entire campus. And I suppose that's been the whole idea behind all this.
Well, it really is. You can look at the other 16 sports that we have, and there's not one that can do for us and for the university what football can do. People come for the other contests, whether it be a 2-hour contest or a 3-hour contest, whether it's a tennis match or whether it's a soccer game or even a basketball game, and they come and they leave right afterwards. They come in time for the game and they leave after the game. Not true of football. It is definitely a full day experience. They don't plan to, they come early. I was here at 9 o'clock. And going to the different tailgate areas, and people were beginning to arrive at 9 o'clock and putting up the tents. And afterwards, I stayed and went to some of the tailgating spots just to see, you know, what are we experiencing here. And I left before they did, and I didn't leave here until probably 4 something, and they were still out there. Now, they're waiting for traffic to depart, but the mindset's different. It's, let's make a day of this. And I can even imagine in the fall where it might be a weekend where they come in early, even earlier than the tailgating times.
And we're talking about a mix of audience here. We're talking about plenty of people with an affinity to the university, our alumni, our friends in the community, our neighbors, but also probably a certain number of folks who are just kind of curious and are going to find this to be a great way to spend a Saturday. And you can't help but think that in that crowd are a number of people who haven't been on this campus for a while.
And that was certainly part of the intent when we talked about adding football. I think we all know that we're oftentimes a best kept secret as a university. People drive by the university. Do they take the time to drive through the university? If it's during the work week, probably not.
Yeah.
Hopefully on a weekend, they maybe are a little bored and need something to do, and they might drive through our campus, because we are totally different than people think we are. We're not the commuter school we were 10 years ago even. We're a traditional college campus, and we're a much prettier campus than we used to be, than some folks remember in that commuter stage that we went through. And so if those folks will come out for football, we've got a better chance of their child or their grandchild considering coming here and going to college, because they've had a look and they're like, wow, this school's much larger than I thought it was. There's still a number of people in this city that have no idea that we have over 26,000 students.
Sure.
And this to me, it helps brand and advertise our university.
Well, and athletics are an incredible calling card across the board, whether it's a much more targeted audience that might be interested in one of the sports that may not grab the headlines all the time. But when you're talking about college athletics, and then you start to talk about football, Division I football, in a couple years, bowl BCS football, there, like it or not, there's a segment, a large segment of our nation actually that associates that with a university that is, I want to put this right, but it's almost as if you're saying you're a real university, or a sense that you finally arrived because you have football. Now, you as athletics director are probably a lightning rod kind of for and against that statement. And I wasn't saying that to tick off anybody, but what I'm getting at is you're on campus with, you're surrounded by everybody, but you're also surrounded by maybe in the faculty community they would say that's not our primary mission as a university, is to have athletics or to have football. What makes us a real university is our students, our research, and the academic side of things. But
yeah, well, we all deal in both perception and in reality. In reality, there is no question we know what a university and a college are here for. Okay, it's higher education and preparing our young people with intellectual capital they need to be successful in the workplace. But we also know, perception-wise, that the experience that a student has while they are on the campus is either going to connect them to the campus, or if they're not involved or engaged, then they will not be connected. When we were a commuter college for so long, I don't think we had the opportunity to connect a segment of our alums to this campus. I've told this story many times. I'm one of 6 children, and 5 girls all went to Winthrop from South Carolina, state-supported school. My dad said, I can afford to send you there. That's where you're going, good teacher education. I am the only one that got really involved at Winthrop. I played basketball there, so intercollegiate athletics, got involved in student government and committees and things. In all likelihood, I'm probably only the one that gives money back to Winthrop because I got involved, okay? Now, if young people got involved in sororities or fraternities here, they probably are engaged with the university and have continued to be engaged. But if they didn't, they probably aren't. I think football is a sport that can engage them, bring them back to where they're not just going to give to athletics, but they're going to give to the College of Business or the College of Nursing or the College of Engineering, just reconnecting people to this campus. And they have time to do it on a weekend where they can come and spend more than 2 hours and really just enjoy the day and reconnect with people they were in school with. So I think perception is you're not a real university without football. Even in the athletic world, it is a perception. Reality, we know which comes first, but I think if you can coordinate the two and partner with athletics and academics, we'll have a better branding opportunity for our university.
well, let's talk a little bit about what we experienced on Saturday. Maybe just with the first question being, is it what you hoped it would be?
Definitely what I hoped it would be, more than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I knew it was a practice game and a scrimmage, if you will. So that is a little bit different than if it's a real game. And so you don't usually have the crowds that turn out. And we're a startup program, so didn't know what to expect on that day.
How much, when you say the spring game was in a sense kind of a point along the way that represents a culmination in that it was the first time we've done it and we have the stadium ready and people are in the seats, but that goes back how far in terms of we're going to have football, we're going to develop the stadium, and we're going to develop
Gosh, it's been at least 5 years since we've been in conversation, and my staff, it's been longer than that.
Okay.
Working on it. So for that, for that date to finally get here and become a reality, we were using it as a dry run. All right. This is our test to see are we ready from an administrative and logistics standpoint for putting on the football game that we're going to need to put on August 31st. Are we ready? And let us look and see what we need to do better. What did we do well? What can we improve upon? And my biggest concern, I'll have to admit, was concern about the parking and the transportation plan. On paper, it looked great, but there was no way to test it until we had this date. And boy, it was a sigh of relief for me, because all I heard were positive comments. I'm sure there were a few things, and I have no idea if people went to the wrong entrances, the color-coded entrances, and how many had to turn around. And there was a debriefing yesterday that I will get all of that information.
All right. And going into this weekend, we were hoping for...
Realistically, we thought 8 would be good for a practice scrimmage and spring game. And we had 13,950. And I remember standing up and looking, and I went into the press box area. And that's up just a little bit higher than even the concourse area. So I could see better and see down, and I was like, wow. I was looking over at the student section and the whole area, and I'm like, our crowds have been known to be late arrivers. So early, I was like, I'm not sure what this is going to look like. But then when people began to just fill in, Jerry Richardson was here, who the field is named after Hugh McCall and Jerry Richardson. And Jerry was here, and I was talking to him, and he looked at me and he said, Judy, if all those people standing around the concourse went to their seats, I believe you have yourself a sellout.
Well, and that said, I was there. I was surrounded by other people I knew, and for the most part, the comments were in the direction of, this is a really good fit. Nothing about it felt overcrowded. You could walk around in that concourse, which is great. There's plenty of elbow room. There's plenty of time, plenty of opportunity to walk around and enjoy being there. And I couldn't find any moment when it really felt like, oops, we undersized something, or just it felt just right. And I was frankly surprised by that.
Well, a lot of time and effort went into the planning with Jenkins Pier and DLR, the local architects and the national architects, respectively, that have experience in stadium building. And we had to really trust them because we didn't have a coach on board at the time. And so I think the planning of the really wide concourses certainly paid off in that regard. The number of restrooms, the number of concession stands, the points of sale. I didn't see lots of long lines. I saw one, but it was not in the concourse. It was outside of the players' tickets for the parents and things.
Well, and one of the questions that we've received on Twitter has to do with crowds and has to do with the future. And I'll interject that I've wondered about this too when 49er football really catches on. Are we bringing in temporary seats at some point? Do we have to bring in temporary seats as we move toward
our plan right now is to make this a supply and demand issue. Right now we want to absolutely make sure that the stadium is full before we ever begin the thoughts of adding additional temporary seating for several reasons. Again, we want a full stadium. We don't just want to add seats and then people not be in the seats that we've added. And when you begin to add temporary seats, the look of the stadium changes. It does. Right. We've got such a beautiful stadium. And when you start doing temporary anything, it's not just adding seats. You have to increase restrooms, which mean porta-johns, and they have to be accessible inside the stadium. So we're just going to kind of play that by ear.
Well, what was your reaction to the potential you saw for traditions developing or traditions being applied? I mean, the student turnout was incredible. I mean, you had pretty close to capacity for students, and they were really into it.
They really were, and I think most people know that the students are paying for the majority of the stadium through a debt service fee, and so it's important to us that they have access, and we want them to take advantage of that access. And one tradition I hope develops is that they will get their tickets online earlier. Okay, a certain segment did, and a certain segment waited, but we certainly hope that is one tradition. But you know, we don't want to impose too many traditions. We want traditions to develop.
Okay.
Because if they're imposed, oftentimes they don't stick. And so we're going to see some of this occur as we go through the process of spring game. Maybe some things started. This is not a new tradition, it's tradition everywhere. A lot of cornhole being played throughout the whole campus, the entire campus, because I did go around to the different sites. And one tradition that we haven't seen a lot of at this university was I saw more Charlotte 49er green and merchandise and paraphernalia that people were either wearing, foam fingers, everything. I mean, the best branding I have seen for our university was on Saturday.
Yeah. Another question related to tradition, and whether this is an imposition or not, it does seem like an obvious tradition. Are we going to stick around and sing the alma mater after every game?
There are some plans to do that, and the Student Affairs Kickoff 2013 committee, that's one of the committees out of 6, met, and that is their plan, is to do that, because there are not very many people on this campus that know the words to our alma mater. And so there's going to have to be a training, and we'll have it up on the scoreboard and do those type things. But we want the students to come up with what those traditions should be. And the Niner walk along the walkway that the team will walk, that's one that we are setting. The team will have breakfast off-site, and they did it at this one as well, at the spring game. And the bus will drop them off at a specific time right at the intersection down from the Student Union, okay? And there's a parking lot, big tailgating area to their right, and they will be dropped off there, and they will walk from there to the football field house and then put on their gear, okay? And they did not do that part. They were not dropped off there on Saturday, but they will be in the fall. And we hope people are going to line that walkway all the way up and make that a tradition and cheer the team on.
I think we had a sense as the stadium was being built and the student housing and the student union over in that area that walkway is primed to be transformed into a focal point of the campus, really, where maybe in the past we would drive by and say, I think the greenway's over there or something. Yeah. But now when you look at it, it's beautiful. And when the fall leaves are out there, it's going to be fun.
Nice. And the alumni had a huge tent set up along with IMG, and I spoke in that area, and that place was alive and kicking.
And that was very well attended, and we can do a whole discussion. And we did a few weeks ago with Jenny Jones about alumni and this fabulous opportunity for alumni engagement as well. But they pulled that off pretty well.
They really did. So I think that's tradition setting in itself.
Yeah.
And the things that we're giving out to new students or prospective students, just a lot of people making their own traditions.
A couple other questions along the same vein here that have come in on Twitter. And this is a question I would have too, as somebody who was not much of an athlete, but was certainly in the marching band. How are we coming on that front, and in whose court is that ball?
Okay, that is in a shared court right now. From a funding perspective, it is not inexpensive to have a marching band, and we have done research and gotten several what I will call budget renditions that differ greatly. Yeah. To the startup for a marching band might be rather eye-opening to some folks. In year one of a true marching band, it would cost about $750,000. And right now, we just don't have those dollars. Sure. Now, and we also did research and saying, where is a marching band located, under whose supervision? And it's different in different places. Sometimes it is in the Student Affairs office. Sometimes it is in the music department. Sometimes it is in athletics, and sometimes it is shared. And when I say shared, it's shared expenses for all of that. So we hadn't planned to have one, and the chancellor has publicly stated there's no funding model for this at this point, so we're initially not going to have one. But when all of this was said early on, we were going to be an FCS program.
Right.
Okay. And just to remind everybody, midway through the construction of the stadium, now we designed the stadium for an FBS, and this is so hard for people. I'm going to go to 1A and 1AA because it just makes it easier for the general public. 1A is your much larger programs, and 1AA has been on like the Elon level.
With playoffs.
Yeah, correct. And so when we switched and joined Conference USA, primarily because of football, so we'll have all of our sports in one conference, football will join that or will play football in competition with Conference USA in 2015. So we've got a little lead up time. But there's been a groundswell lately about what about the band? And we were looking at, were there drum lines out there we could do? Were there high school bands? Not what we wanted, but something to have some kind of music at each one of the 6 games coming up as we try to work our way through this. Well, a little bit of ground swelling, and I can tell you, and I don't want to speak on Ken Lamblow's behalf, the dean, but it's no secret that any music department would relish having a marching band because it enhances the people that might come to your university and become a part of the music program. And Ken and I have both talked and collaborated on that. And then some other folks are getting involved and you know, trying to raise some money themselves and without going too public with any of that at this point, to say, well, let's do something initially and see what we can get going. So without divulging information I shouldn't be divulging at this point, that conversation is alive and well and moving forward rapidly. To have something in place, hopefully, even for August. So contributions are well accepted, you know, welcomed.
And somewhat conversely, I guess, to the point about Ken Lamblow and the College of Arts and Architecture being, you know, if you build it, they will come. If you don't build it, but you try to go ahead with it anyway, it might not be the world's greatest marching band. And I think if
it might not be a marching band initially. It might be something a little different.
But whatever we do, I am probably safe in assuming we're going to want to do it well and do it right.
We don't want to do anything halfway. We really don't. That does not send the message we want. So whatever we put out there, if we are able to get something together for this fall, will not be what is out there in 2015, but whatever we put out there, it will be done well. And it will build forward and toward the direction of having what we need in 2015.
If you're watching and you have questions for Athletics Director Judy Rose, our goal today is to stay focused on what we learned from the spring game, first ever 49er football game in our new stadium here on campus, and then moving forward as we're looking at the end of August and the first regular season game, what we learned, what we're going to apply, what the impact is going to be. But to try to summarize some of the questions, some of the other questions that we received are kind of in the direction of this thought, picking up on what you just said about doing it right. Doing college football right in the national climate in which we find ourselves, where there have been some, in some cases horrific, in some cases really stupid, well, probably all really stupid incidents at some of the major programs across the country, not just in football, but also in other programs within intercollegiate athletics. There's always been a pretty high level of scrutiny on college athletics, but we are probably, and you probably know the data here, but it seems to me we must be the last biggest university in the biggest market in the country to not have football. And here we are starting it in a time when some of the other bad news things that have been happening at other nationally known programs kind of cast a shadow over college athletics.
Well, you know, I for one have not let the thought of adding football become negative about what might happen. Really for a couple of reasons. One in particular, we have focused on trying to run an ethical program from the get-go. We've never had a major sanction, ever. And knock on wood, hope we never do, and don't anticipate that we will, because we pay attention to the details of what's going on. Now, people think, oh gosh, when you add football, that changes everything. Well, it doesn't really change everything if you've got the proper amount of oversight in place. Now, we made a major move, major decision when we added football. Our Director of Compliance was Chris Thomason, oversaw all of our compliance. We moved him, physically moved him to the football field house. He is down there with all of those coaches Nobody ever wants the compliance person right beside them. Well, we put them right beside them because, like, you know what? We're starting a sport that everybody has a perception of, oh my gosh, all of the numbers, what could happen, this, that, and the other. So he's down there on a daily basis, and they report to him on a daily basis. Now, Brad Lambert reports directly to me. I meet with Brad monthly. I meet with Chris monthly, separately, just to make sure we are dotting our I's and crossing our T's, and that if they have any questions, and we've told them, you know what our mindset is at Charlotte. We're going to do it right. You break the rules intentionally, you're gone. I don't care who you are. And so that mindset is carrying over from basketball and soccer, everything that we've got. And we're not treating football any differently, except we sent a very strong message when we put a person down there physically to oversee. And his duties now are primarily football and to oversee and make sure that we are in compliance.
What's it like among the other sports programs in your athletics department when it comes to, okay, here comes football? Is this like the big gorilla coming in and getting all the attention when here we've been trying in some of our other sports, or whatever the situation may be?
I think there's probably some fear.
Yeah.
There's probably some fear from some. Oh my gosh, are they going to do away with my sport?
Right.
And we had meetings early on to assure them. We have absolutely no intention, and one of the assumptions when we added football was that we are not going to cut existing sports that we have. And so we've tried to certainly put them at ease on that. The dollar stretch is pretty thin. I'm not going to say it doesn't. It does, and we had to prioritize along the way in our spending and what we're doing. I am sure when you see something so spanking brand new as that football stadium, and when you walk inside the field house and you look at the strength and conditioning there compared to the other one that we have, if nothing else, one's brand new.
Right.
And anything new, looks better. And if you look at the training room, it's larger. Well, those guys are larger, and baseball's using it as well as football right now. And when we add some additional women's sports, we'll probably be shifting them. The academic center is new, it's larger. We're redoing the academic center that we have, because when we first built the academic center and the Baltimore Wallace Center, we learned tremendously to help us with the football, one down in the football facility. We had the round tables where every seat at the table, not round, but was computer connected and everything. Well, you know what? We thought it looked great. A lot of socializing goes around on those tables. And we did cubicles in the other one. So now more efficient, more effective. So we're going to redo the one up here.
Right. In our final few minutes, I would just ask you maybe one last question. What do you want the folks who are part of our immediate campus community to know most about what we're doing with football, what you see coming down the road, and what should we know as we go out in the community and are in position? We're always going to be asked, well, you're at UNC Charlotte. I'm seeing things about football there. What's the one message you want us to take out into the community on behalf of the program and the university when it comes to what we're doing?
I think the biggest thing is, I would hope, in particular faculty and staff, if they're asked about football and not asked about the department that they're working in, to not take that as a personal affront. I would like for people to think, wow, that's an asset to us. It's bringing attention to the university, because it can certainly spill over, and I certainly believe it will spill over. It has done fundraising with various folks that have supported athletics over the years that decided to also give to other parts of the university, and that's when it's truly a win-win. We don't want to be considered to be apart from the university with football or any of our athletic program. We want to be considered a part of the university, and that's a major difference. We consider ourselves a part, and when the chancellor created the football committee on campus, it was imperative to us that the chairpeople of those different committees on kickoff 2013 not be athletic personnel, but that they be folks from the various departments. Michelle Howard was the one for student affairs, and Keith Wassam for business affairs, and Cindy Wolf Johnson for academic affairs, and they led the leadership on those various committees. Now, we had a person on the committee, as well as there were 85 people from across campus on those committees. So When you add a sport like football, that is not an athletic department decision. That's a university decision, and it needs to be owned by the university. And I hope there's pride in the way that we're going to run this program. And I hope people have confidence in the way we have run the athletic program, not bringing major negative attention to the university, but hopefully more positive attention.
All right. Well, I would encourage folks to check out 49er Athletics website and learn more about football, but learn more about the other sports, the entirety of the program. And we're looking forward to finishing up this academic year, finishing up the athletic schedule, having, I guess, no time to breathe in the summer, but the real, fall will be upon us before we know it. And I'm sure we're going to ask you to come back in various formats, talk with us a little bit more, and we'll look forward to speaking more with the folks who are even more directly in the program, as we have been doing through Inside UNC Charlotte. So thank you for joining us once again, and we will be back next week with another version of the Live Wire right here on Inside UNC Charlotte. And thank you again to Judy Rose for joining us today.
Thank you, and thanks for the comments they sent in.
Thank you.